Okay, in today's lesson we're going to talk about adding and subtracting real numbers. And of course you've been doing addition and subtraction since as far back as you can remember, but now we're going to start dealing with negative numbers and things are going to look a little bit different. But really, it's no different than any of the math you've done before. We just need to learn a few rules. Let me write a few things down first that'll help us as we go. Some of this is going to be obvious. I want you to write these down and remember them. When you add a positive number to a positive number, you're always going to get a positive number. That's the universal truth. Positive plus positive is positive. If you add, let me write it over here, a negative number to a negative number, you're always going to get a negative number. So far it's not too terribly hard to understand. Okay. Positive, positive gives you positive, negative, negative gives you negative. These are if you add these numbers together. The only time it becomes a little bit, where you have to use a few brain cells is if you add a positive to a negative number. Then the resulting sign can either be positive or negative, and whichever sign you put in front is going to depend on what you actually add here. It's going to depend on which one's bigger. Basically, if the positive number is bigger, the final result's going to be positive. If the negative number is bigger, the final result's going to be negative. We're going to see this time and time again in the problems. I just wanted to write that down. It'll help us as we go. So let's go through some simple baby problems here. 4 plus 8 equals 12. Okay, that is, I think you guys will all agree that that is correct. Positive plus positive gives me positive, and all I've done is add the absolute values of the numbers, which is positive, and it gives me 12. No problem. Now let's take something just a hair different. Minus 3, also known as negative 3, plus negative 7, what is that going to equal? Well, I'm adding two things together. One of them is negative, the other one's negative. The answer, according to this, is going to be negative. So it's going to be a negative number, and what do you actually put here? Well, you add the absolute values here. So it's 3 plus 7 is 10, so the actual answer is 10. There's a bunch of theory you can go into figuring out how to do all this and why it's this way, but in a nutshell, if this is your number line, like this, okay, and this is 0, and these are all negative numbers, you've got negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10. So this is negative 10 over here. And this is negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. This is negative 3, okay, right there. You're already at negative 3, and I'm adding to it 7 more negative numbers, which means I'm going to be going left. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's how you end up at negative 10. That's kind of a graphical representation, but I really think that you should just kind of dispense with that and just try to do a bunch of problems here, and you'll understand as we go. Negative plus negative gives me negative. That's pretty much the simple way to say it. Another way to write this, you'll see it as we go along, but I want to make you aware of it. You don't need these parentheses explicitly. You can write this as negative 3. When you have plus a negative number, it's the same thing as a minus that number. So this is the exact same thing. Negative 3 plus a negative 7 is the same as negative 3 minus 7. When you have plus negative like that, it's just the same thing as a minus sign. And that makes sense because here I'm adding a negative number. Adding a negative number is pretty much the same thing as subtraction. So all this negative positive business is just addition and subtraction, which is the same thing you've been dealing with all your life. So let's proceed. I think working more problems will make it clear. 6 plus negative 4 equals. How do we write this? Well, I've got a positive and I've got a negative number, and I'm adding them together. And we already said positive and negative can give me either sign. The sign of the answer is going to be based on which one's bigger. Okay, 6 is bigger, 6 is positive, the answer is going to be positive. And then how do you actually get the number? Well, you just do the math here. The answer is going to be 2. Positive 2. Of course, you don't need to put the positive there. It's always implied. Another way to write this, just so you know, plus and negative is the same as minus. So it's the same as 6 minus 4, which is 2. So I'm trying to show you that this negative business is the same thing that you've always been seeing. 6 plus negative 4 is the same as 6 minus 4, which is 2. And when you think about it, you have 6 units of something, and you're adding 4 negative units. So you're actually subtracting. You're taking 4 away from the 6 that you had, so you end up with a positive 2. Okay? Let's do another. 9 plus minus 11 plus a negative 11. Okay? It's also can be written as 9 plus a negative 11 is the same as minus 11. Now see, here you go. You've only got 9 items, right? 9 pencils, but I'm subtracting 11 pencils. Obviously, if I subtract that many pencils, I don't have enough to begin with. So I'm going to owe you some pencils in the end. So the answer is going to be negative because I've got a positive and a negative that I'm adding together, positive 9 and negative 11. The answer is going to be negative because 11's bigger, and the way you get the actual number to fill in the blank here is to do the subtraction. 9 minus 11 is a negative 2. So another way to get the number here is just forget about the signs. Just subtract 9 minus 11. Subtract 11 minus 9, which is 2, and just slap that negative on the front. And you can kind of think about that, you know, like this. I mean, if here's a positive 9 over here, here's 0 on the number line. Okay, I'm going to subtract all of these 9 things, and then I've got to subtract 2 more to make minus 11. So here's minus 2. That's why 9, and this is 11 units right here. 9 minus 11 units gives me a negative 2. So you put the sign in place based on which one's bigger. The bigger one's 11, so I put a negative. And then the actual number is just go ahead and take the difference of the 2. 11 minus 9 is 2. And this will just be more clear, you know, as we go about working more problems. It'll become absolute second nature after a while. Absolute second nature. You deal with the sign first, and then deal with the magnitude, trying to figure out what actually goes in there secondarily to that. Alright, let's work some more problems. Okay, let's say we've got negative 5 plus negative 7. Well, that's a negative plus a negative. Answer will always be negative. And then to get the actual number, I just add the numbers together. 5 plus 7 is 12. The answer is negative 12. Okay. And just for kicks, we'll just do one that looks a little bit different. Negative 0.4 plus 0.9 equals. Well, I'm adding a negative and a positive, so I don't know. I have to figure out what the sign of the answer is going to be. The sign of the answer is going to be the bigger number, and this is bigger, so the answer is going to be positive. And then to get the number, I just subtract these two from each other. 0.9 minus 0.4 is 0.5, and that's the answer. So when you have one negative and one positive, you end up subtracting the numbers to get the actual number here, and then to determine the sign, you just use the sign of the bigger number. Okay, let's continue here. Let's say I have something that looks like 5 plus 4 plus minus 2, and I need to figure out what this is. Okay. Well, first we want to work inside the brackets because we always do that first. We've got 4 plus minus 2, which is also the same as, remember, plus and negative. When you have plus and negative, that's the same as minus. So this is really equal to 4 minus 2, which is positive 2. 5 plus all this stuff, which is 2, is equal to 7, and that's the answer. Okay, let's say we have minus 2 plus parentheses minus 4 plus 5 what is this equal to? Well, we want to deal with this first. We got a negative and a positive we're adding together. And so we're going to use the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number is 5, so the answer is going to be positive. And because we have a negative and a positive, we're going to subtract these. We're going to subtract the absolute value of these. So 5 minus 4 is 1. And because 5 is bigger, the answer is going to be positive. So inside here, this is all just equal to 1. So what we end up with is minus 2 plus 1, right? And then we need to do this. Again, we're adding a negative and a positive number. Negative 2 is the bigger number, so the answer is going to be negative. And then to get the number, we just subtract these two things. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Answer is negative 1. So you kind of have to do things a little bit different. And actually, kind of as an aside, let me show you something here. This really isn't too mystical. When you have addition, you can always flip the order. For instance, 3 plus 2 is the same as 2 plus 3. Negative 2 plus 1 is the same as 1 plus negative 2, which we've already said plus a negative is like a minus, so that's 1 minus 2. So I can flip this around and make it 1 minus 2, and I think personally in this form 1 minus 2 looks like it should be a negative number. It's a little bit more obvious because you only have one thing, you're trying to subtract two things, so you're going to end up with a negative number. And like I said way early in the beginning of the course, you're going to be, you're going to have many times when there's going to be many different ways to actually solve the problem or write it down. It may look a little bit different, but you're going to use many different ways to get the same answer, which is kind of cool because you can then actually have some creative freedom in how you solve the problem, which can be extremely useful. Because sometimes my way that I'm doing here on the board may not be the way that's obvious to you guys, and as long as you know the rules, you will always get it right. Okay? Let's continue with a couple more problems like this. Let's make things a little bit more difficult. Let's say minus 4 plus minus 3 plus 2 plus minus 2. Okay? This is negative plus a negative. The answer will always be negative. 3 plus 4 is 7, so this part is negative 7. For this one, now this is interesting. You've got 2 plus a minus 2, which is the same thing as 2 plus minus is like subtraction minus 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So this big fat term is equal to minus 7. This big fat term is equal to 0. So this entire answer is minus 7 plus 0 is minus 7. That's the answer. Let's do minus 4 plus negative 3 plus 2 plus negative 3. Okay. What is this equal to inside the parentheses? We do that first. Negative 3 plus 2 is equal to negative 1 because negative 3 is the bigger number, so it's going to be negative. And since I have a negative and a positive, I just subtract the absolute value. 3 minus 2 is 1, so negative 1. Okay, so let me rewrite this as minus 4 plus a negative 1 is the same as minus 1 plus a negative 3 is the same as minus 3. And notice I'm intentionally writing them slightly different. Sometimes I say plus a negative, and sometimes I just say plus a negative is equal to minus. I'm trying to show you the various different ways you can write these things. Okay. So let's just work with this one first. Minus 4, take away one more additional thing, is going to give me minus 5. Okay, so this is minus 5 minus 3. Negative 5 minus 3 is equal to negative 8. Because you're doing a negative and you're subtracting more things, so the answer is going to be negative, and you just add these things together to give you the exact number that you want to write down there, to give you negative 8. Okay. So repetition really is the easiest way to get this stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and proceed, and let's do, now this is going to be interesting, negative of the absolute value of negative 9 plus negative 3 in the absolute value plus negative 6. Okay, so let's work inside of here first. What's negative 9 plus negative 3? Negative, adding another negative, answer will be negative. We add the two things together, 9 plus 3, 10, 11, 12. So the answer inside of here is negative 12. However, I've got absolute value brackets on the outside. Absolute value just takes whatever's inside and makes it positive. So I'm going to carry down my negative from the outside. Absolute value of negative 12 is positive 12. So that's a positive 12, like this, plus negative 6. Now this negative out here just makes this a negative 12. So it's funny, I started out with a negative 12, but I made it a positive 12, but then I made it a negative 12 again. Negative 12 plus negative 6, answer is going to be negative. Let me do it over here actually. Answer will be negative because I'm adding two negative numbers. 12 plus 6 is 18, so the answer will be negative 18. Okay, let's do absolute value of 3/5 plus negative 4/5. And luckily this fraction has 5 in the bottom, so I can go ahead and add it, no problem. But I have a positive and a negative that I'm adding together, so I need to figure out which one is bigger. And the bigger fraction is 4/5 is bigger than 3/5, so the answer is going to be inside this absolute value sign anyway. The answer is going to be negative. And then in order to get the actual number, I take 4 minus 3, which is 1. It's going to be 1/5. And all of this stuff is inside an absolute value sign, which takes any sign inside and makes it positive, so the answer is going to be 1/5. So when you're adding things that are different signs, you just do this, make sure you get the correct sign based on the biggest number, and then you just subtract the two. 4 minus 3 is 1. Even though it's actually 3 plus a negative 4, you just go ahead and subtract them in whichever way is easiest for you, and then you're good to go. Let's do one more quick one. I've got minus 5.2 plus absolute value minus 2.5 plus negative 4 in absolute value. Well, negative 2.5 plus negative 4 is going to be inside of here anyway. Let me just make it a little bit easier. Let me just get rid of some of this stuff right above. Inside of the absolute value here, negative plus negative is negative, and then I just go ahead and add the numbers. 2.5 plus 4 is 6.5. Okay, but this is an absolute value, so in reality this is going to be minus 5.2 plus 6.5, because the absolute value makes the 6.5 positive. So then the final answer down here is going to be 6.5 minus 5.2, which is going to be 1.3. Okay. All right. Now let's change pace just a little bit here. Okay. Let's say we're going to do some plug and chug things here. Let's say x is equal to 2, y is equal to negative 3, z is equal to negative 4, and u is equal to 5. Okay, let's just do a couple simple problems. X plus y is equal to x, which is 2, plus y, which is negative 3, equals. Adding negative and a positive, negative 3 is bigger, so the answer is going to be negative. 3 minus 2 is 1, answer is negative 1. Okay, let's try x plus u plus 3. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Parentheses, x is 2, plus u is 5, plus 3. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 3 is 10. That one wasn't very hard. Let's try something a little bit different. X plus z plus u plus z equals x is 2 plus negative 4 plus u is 5 plus negative 4 for z, like that. Okay, now let's work with this one. Inside this parentheses, the answer is going to be negative because 4 is bigger. 4 minus 2 is 2. Inside of here, answer is going to be positive because 5 is bigger. 5 minus 4 is 1. Okay, so now I just need to add these two things together. And for that, the answer will be negative because 2 is bigger, and then 2 minus 1 is 1. So the answer to that entire big old mess there is negative 1.